Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines, and in the latest tier list ranking video we have the NG Models June releases, which were literally just announced on the 29th of May. Now this is quite an unusual month for NG Models because they have clearly rolled out the barrel, if that's the right phrase, and have announced 27 separate 400 scale releases, which is unprecedented in terms of the quantity. In fact, you know, it's the same size number of releases as Gemini and Phoenix added together, probably plus a couple of extra models. So it's a lot of models, and you know, it's unclear whether this is going to be the new normal for NG models or whether this is a one-off, or whether these releases will be spread out over a longer period of time than a month. I get the feeling that they probably won't be. Though I imagine a few will slip because in recent months NG Models releases, a few have been slipping a month or two occasionally. But I get the feeling that this may be the start of something new from NG. I know that they've been moving factories and they've got a lot of extra capacity, and it looks like they are willing to use that capacity to release a substantial number of models each month. What this means for 400 scale is really hard to say. I just don't know if the market can really consume this many releases from the major manufacturers. I doubt that it can. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, whether this knocks some of the existing manufacturers out of contention, or even if that's what NG is trying to do. I don't really know. But you've got to think that some of the existing manufacturers must be in positions that are slightly weak, like Phoenix. They haven't done anything new for a while. They keep on releasing the same models. Increasingly, NG are moving into their space. But having said that, NG don't often announce models that have literally just come out onto the aviation scene. So Phoenix tend to be able to turn around and release new aircraft really quickly. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on. I don't know, but I sense that things are changing. Okay, so on to the models. Now obviously there's a lot of them, and I don't want to be talking a long time about each of these models because this will be a very long video and that's not good for you or me probably. But one of the good things about NG Models is all of their molds are excellent. So I don't have to spend time talking about the molds and how they compare to other people's molds. They're almost always as good or better. The only one which is potentially not as good as the competition is the new 777s, which may be slightly inferior to the Aviation 400 and jcwings molds. But everything else is top-notch, really top-notch, and even the 777s are very good. So there's no real concerns where I'm standing from buying NG models. They're always going to be good. You're not going to be seeing any scrap metal from them, and you're unlikely to see that many gas guzzlers either. So it's a case of sorting, you know, the great from the good, and obviously this is where opinion comes into this very much. So I'm going to try and run through these a lot quicker than I have done in some of my other videos where I've had to talk about the molds and the how releases compare between brands. So let's try and do this one in a reasonable amount of time. There's a lot of models to get through here. Okay, so we'll start with the two 747 SPs. There haven't been enough 747 SPs for my liking, and I'm a little disappointed, I have to say, in the pair that have just been announced, primarily because they are both just really repeats of previous releases. So the first one is a CAAC, Civil Aviation Administration of China SP. It's very similar, if in fact in detail exactly the same really, to the release that was done in December, except this time round it's got an American registration and not a Chinese registration. Otherwise the model's the same. I'm a hardcore SP collector, but even I can't justify getting two SPs that are effectively the same with just different regos. So this one for me is, despite how much I love the SPs, this one's just a workhorse model. It's just the first of several releases in this month which are effectively re-releases with different registration numbers. The next SP is exactly the same. When they first did South African Airways SP and delivery colours, they had some issues. Not all of the models got released. I know there's been some long-term pre-orders for these to fill out the original releases, and I think those are going to be serviced this month. And NG at the same time have released a second version with a different registration number, but effectively exactly the same. I've got the original, I've no reason to get this one. It's a really nice model, but it's not very exciting. They've made it already. So for me, again, it's just another workhorse. I'd like to see more SPs, a more variety of SPs, but just re-releasing ones that you've made with different regos is not particularly exciting from my perspective. Okay, so next up we're into the Airbus narrowbodies. NG have obviously just recently announced, or I recently announced for them, their NG models A320 series. So we've got A321s, 20s and A319s. All of those make an appearance this month. And there's some really interesting releases amongst that group. So I know an Indigo pilot who will be super pleased to see that 2 of this month's A321s are Indigo. And one of these, I know the 1000th, or is it 100th? A321 here has been announced by jcwings already, but you know what JC are like, God knows when that's going to hit the market, could never hit the market. So you don't really be spending time waiting around for them to actually get that to market when you've got a NG models release which is going to be, you know, superior anyway because the model's much better. So for me, both of these ones are, you know, up there in the supersonic category. I don't think Indian Airlines have been particularly well represented, and there's a big growing market there. I'm sure that they will do well. Next up is another A321. This one's another Neo. It's a Delta Airlines version. It's a little unclear actually what exactly this version is. Is it going to be with the American reg? The picture represents the aircraft with the German test reg. So it'll be interesting to see which of those it is. Seems to be, even though the picture is suggesting the German one, that the sellers are suggesting the American one. I'm not really sure. Obviously, the fact that NG are releasing Delta Airlines itself is interesting, given the legal issues that have arisen. Either they've been resolved, or NG are just given DL the finger here. Delta Airlines obviously sells like hotcakes in the States. This is a really cool model. This is intruding directly into Gemini territory. It's going to sell well. It's going to be a nice release. It's another supersonic. Next up, we've got a pair of Icelandic Neos. We've got the Play A321 Neo and a Play A320 Neo. Play is started by some of the principals that were part of WOW. The name is a bit rubbish. The livery is okay, but not particularly exciting either. It's not as much as WOW's was. You know, it's not particularly thrilling me, but I'm sure they're colourful, they'll sell well, it's modern, it's new, it's fresh. You know, these are both going to be nice models, very colourful, but they don't do a huge amount for me. I think they're going to go in the high fly category from where I'm standing. Okay, next up we have a pair of ARJ21s, both of which are in the colours of China Express. It does seem like the ARJ is gradually getting out there into production, and NG are the only people with an actual mould for the type. This is the old Panda mould, which is very good, so there's no real concerns about that whatsoever. China Express is an interesting airline. It looks like they've got 3 of a 50 plane order for ARJs now in service. It's, you know, interesting for me. I like Chinese airliners, and I will definitely be getting one of these China Express ones, if not both of them. One of them is in standard colours. That one's I'm going to make a supersonic, and the second one is in the it's got some kind of Chinese writing on it. I don't really know. I haven't looked into what it represents. It's not as particularly attractive for a Chinese scheme, special scheme. I'm going to put that one in high flyer. I may get it, may not. Next up, we've got an A350. It's just the single A350 this month, and it's Air France. Now that would perhaps be exciting for some people if it wasn't the fact that they had released an Air France A350 very recently. I don't see any difference between this one and that one, other than the fact that the reg is different again. This one is HTYJ and the other one is HTYL. Do we need 2 in 2 or 3 months? Probably not really. In fact, it's been unusual releasing or re-releasing so close together. I'm not really sure why they're doing that. Aeroclassics do it sometimes, I think, just to try and shift stock. Not sure if that's what NG are doing here or not. Interestingly, if you look at the part numbers, this one is an earlier part number than the last one, so it suggests that it's planned. Either way, it's not particularly exciting. Air France isn't very exciting anyway, but 2 Air France A350s in a few months, this one's going to go up into workhorse as well. Next up, we're on to the Tupolev Tu-204s. I don't think the 204 has been particularly heavily used by NG since they've started producing them. They've made a small number. They haven't really made any which you could say are Russian, or at least Russian passenger airliners anyway. They've concentrated primarily on, I guess, the newer ones, which often are relatively colourful, but from my perspective rather boring, cargo airlines, and then they've done some of the more exciting foreign airlines like Mahan Air and Air Koryu and Cubana. So it's good to see finally them actually push out an Aeroflot, and I wonder whether the fact that Panda produced 2 previous Aeroflot liveries has made them jump ahead to this one, because if you look at the production number, it's 40009, whereas they seem to be missing several of the earlier production numbers. I think that if you look at their release set, then it jumps from like 4002 or 4003, and then there's a gap. So there's a 4005, there's a 4008, and then on to 9. So there's a couple of empty spaces there. 4 and 6 and 7, and then you get up to this new one, which is 9. So maybe there was some Aeroflots in there, but Panda have slightly stolen their thunder there. So they've jumped up and they're releasing this billboard colours Aeroflot, which is a really, well, big, colourful scheme. It's a scheme I don't think was ever applied to any other Aeroflot type. It's from the early 90s, just after the breakup of the Soviet Union. It's really nice. It's going to be super nice. This one's definitely supersonic for me, and it's one that I'm definitely going to be getting. Really love that, and I'd love to see more Russian airline Tu-204s from NG. The next Tu-204 fits very much into this, where they've mainly been going with their Tu-204s to date, cargo and foreign versions, and this one's in the colours of TNT, and again it's got the Egyptian registration, which suggested it was being operated by, I think, Air Cairo, is it? Yeah, it's nice enough. It's an orange scheme. It's quite colourful, but it's not the sort of Tu-204 that I'm going to be acquiring. And I'm going to move this one up into the high flyer territory. Nice model, nice colours, good to see Tu-204s, but not the sort of Tu-204 I'm after. Okay, last of the baby buses this month is an A319, the first A319, and this one is in the colours of SAS, a Star Alliance version. This one looks really nice actually. Not a big SAS collector, again doesn't really fit my criteria whatsoever, but I get the feeling that this one will be popular. Star Alliance colours scheme ones tend to do well, I think, anyway, because some people obviously just collect Alliance colours. SAS is a popular airline. This one for me is going to be up there in the supersonic. Good to see the A319 debuting. On to the 757, the mould that started it all for NG models, and still probably my favourite of their moulds. Really love their 757s, and this month again we've got a couple of Deltas, which again suggests that they just don't care about the licensing problems, or that they've come to some agreement with Delta. Hard to say. I don't go into the minutiae of the different variants of Delta 757s. These two both got winglets, and one of them's wearing a trans-wheeled scheme, a rego. It's also got some kind of logo on it. I can't really tell what it says. It's 42 it says. I'm sure it's well known what that means, but I don't know what it is. Otherwise they're both in the standard current scheme. It's a nice scheme. Actually one of the better of the existing US schemes. I really love the Delta livery, and I'm sure again these will sell like hotcakes. Really popular airline and aircraft combo. So for me these are both going to go up to supersonic, because I get the feeling they're going to do super well. Again, they don't really fit my criteria. They're too modern for me, but I'm sure they'll be really nice. I would like to see more classic 757s. I often say this, or at least 757s from a slightly earlier period, but you know, not this month. Okay. Next up is a 7879, and this one is in the colours of Saudi Arabian, one special scheme representing the 75 years. It's a scheme that's been done multiple times already, or at least it's a scheme which has been announced by jcwings. Of course, they haven't actually released the model. It's been done by Phoenix on their vastly inferior mould. Some people I saw are not overly thrilled to see these being done again when they've already been done by other manufacturers, but you've got to bear in mind, if NG are looking to knock them out of the game, then it needs to do some of the similar things that they're doing. It's a nice enough scheme. It's hard for me to say nice things about Saudi. I don't really appreciate the regime in Saudi Arabia. It's not one I'd ever buy, even if I did collect Middle Eastern Airlines, I think, just because of that reason. Do you really want to celebrate the Saudi royal family? You shouldn't. I'm sure it's going to be a fine model. Again, they've got a great mould. I'm sure they won't make a mess of it, but it's just a workhorse for me. Into some 737-8s, and this month we've got two, both Canadians, both WestJet, both effectively exactly the same from what I can see here, except that again the regos differ, so they're both WestJet cargos. I don't think there's any difference. No, I'm looking at the pictures now. I see one's got blended winglets, one's got scimitars. Whoopie-doo. Not very exciting really, WestJet cargo. NG models seem to really like WestJet. They've released 3 WestJet passenger versions already, but these two don't do a huge amount for me. It's a nice enough scheme. I'm sure they'll be nice, but for me, again, they're just workhorses. Typical kind of thing you'd expect from NG. Nothing particularly exciting. Okay, we're getting there, and hopefully this isn't taking forever. Next up, we've got an A330. It's Lufthansa. It's a boring scheme. It's a very boring scheme. Our Lufthansa scheme nowadays really does not excite at all. And I get a sneaking suspicion, I'm just checking, that Lufthansa A330 is something that NG have done already. Let me just have a look. Yep, they have. They did DAIKR, and now they're doing DAIKQ. So, again, it's effectively a re-release with a slightly different rego. It's not exactly floating my boat. I imagine it'll sell fine because Lufthansa stuff tends to sell well, but it's not very interesting. So again, it's another workhorse. Okay, into the 777s, and we start out with the China cargo. Didn't I just moan about the number of China Airlines aircraft being made in the jcwings video? I think I did. Love the scheme, but it's pretty, so ordinary to get China Airlines and cargo airlines. Don't really float my boat anyway. So China cargo, China Airlines cargo, I should say. Yeah, it's another workhorse, isn't it? It's going to be fine. It's going to be nice. It's not going to excite me. It's going to be a perfectly good model. And the same can be said for the next release, KLM, on a 777-300ER PHBVN. The KLM scheme is nice, though actually I think I preferred it before they did that funny thing at the front, moving down the blue. A couple of people have pointed out that this again has been made already by multiple manufacturers. Even this rego, I believe, has been made by multiple manufacturers. I'm pretty sure it would have turned up in Phoenix sometime. Obviously, the 777 is decent, nothing special. Looking at the pictures, people have mentioned that the engine nacelles are not showing the right logo. It's missing the crown, and that's probably because of the next version. So hopefully they'll fix that up. Again, this is a really ordinary release. I'm sure it'll be nice, but it's pretty workhorsey from my understanding. The next one is more interesting, I think. KLM Asia, which is the subsidiary, which I'm not sure if they still use it, but is the cheap to get around China's aggression concerning doing things with Taiwan. So you have to create yourself a separate version of the airline, fake that you're really, we're not really KLM, we're KLM Asia, in the same way that British Airways had British Asia Airways, and there are several other versions of this kind of thing. This one, is slightly more unusual. I don't know, just checking whether this has been made before by anybody. I'd be surprised if it had been, but let's have a look. Cars doesn't look like it has been. So this one is, I think, more interesting. Looking at it, there's a lot of KLM 777's been made, which just illustrates really how popular the airline is, I guess, and also how boring Phoenix are, because I'm looking through and a good chunk of these are Phoenix releases. They love KLM. But this one's never been made, so this one's unique. I think this one is more interesting for that reason, and this is probably the reason that the other one is missing the logo on the engines, because I presume that KLM Asia isn't allowed to have the KLM crown, the royal crown. So I'm going to move this one up high fly. This one is more interesting, a good release, nice to be able to riff off of the standard livery, slightly modified to make something different. 5 models to go, and the first 737-600 announced by NG Models is the newest 737-600 livery that could be made. It is in the colours of what is called Aeroflyer, which is a Kelowna flight craft, are flying a couple of 737-600s, ex-WestJet examples on charter routes. It's actually a really cool livery, actually. I really like it. It's got planes on the tail, and if you look at them, which is really cool, is they're actually different types of planes. They're not all the same. So you've got some T-tail, looks like 727s. You've got some that look kind of like DC-8s. So I think it's really cool. And it's got the eye mask, which looks good as well. I do like eye masks, but I'm a sucker for those. So I think that this one is really nice. And it's the first time that anyone's obviously made it, so it's unique as well. This one's going up as supersonic for me. Too new for me to buy, unfortunately, but it is a nice livery. Now, from the 600, we go to the 900, and we have a couple of United Airlines 737-900s. Again, like Delta, these are going to sell well. The first one is in the Continental Globe colours with the United titles. It's a really standard release, but it's one that's going to sell well. I'm sure it will look really nice. It's certainly going to blow out of the water anything that has been made by Gemini in this area on that jcwings mold they use. So for this one, for me, this is a supersonic. I think this one's going to sell super well, and I'm sure it'll be very nice. The next one is the Eco Skies livery. American carriers just don't do special schemes like Chinese airlines do. It's a nice enough, I guess, but it isn't very exciting, is it? There's a little bit of green and some titles, and then they've removed everything else. It's not very exciting. I'm just got a couple of China Southern 737s the other day from NG, and they were wearing these amazing liveries, and this one is, it's kind of boring, but it's okay. Again, I'm sure it'll sell well. I'm sure it'll be a nice model, so I'm going to put this one into high flyer. It's not quite as exciting as getting a standard release, and the livery isn't, it's nice, but it's not that nice. So, bringing up the rear, we've got a pair of Tristars. If it's not for the 757, the Tristar is clearly my favourite NG mould. Love them, and we haven't been seeing anywhere near enough. And 1 or 2 a month really isn't enough, in my opinion. But it's good at least to see some, because for so long time we haven't seen any. So that's been really disappointing. The first one of these models is the number 1 model from what is called Buchanan Models, which is an NG offshoot of some kind. And it is a hybrid scheme, which is not going to set the world on fire or my heart aflutter. It is a Caledonian Tristar, which has been made previously, but this time with British Airways titles, because it was released to BA for a short period of time in the 90s at some point. It's going to be lovely because they've got a lovely mould, but I've already got a Caledonian hybrid 757 in these colours. Do I need a Tristar as well? No, I don't. Hybrid schemes are nice, but they're never as exciting as the standard colours, and when you're only producing 1 or 2 Tristars once in a blue moon, then it really would be better not to be seeing hybrids. So yeah, it's cheap and easy to do this, and it fills a gap, I'm sure, and I'm sure it'll sell because there are plenty of BA collectors. Whether it will sell 240 pieces, I'm not so sure. But for me, this one's just a workhorse model. I can't stretch the gainer. I don't think. I might buckle under the pressure, but I don't think I will. I haven't really got a space for it anyway. Which leaves the last Tristar, and the model of the month for me, and I hope for lots of people, a Twin Globes TWA Tristar in the delivery colours. Now, obviously, NG have had issues with electroplating and all that, and I don't know whether this one will have a painted silver belly or it will be electroplated. Personally, I don't really care that much. I think the silver bellies look fine either way. It'd be better if it was electroplated, but it's not the end of the universe. It's just nice to get one, and there's never really been a good Twin Globes Tristar. I don't think it was ever made by Gemini or Dragon. There may well have been a blue box version, but I'm sure it was rubbish. There was a Loch Ness version. Less said about that, probably the better. And this is probably going to be the first really good one that's ever been made. I'm super excited for this. It is, for me, the model of the month, and it is definitely supersonic. Okay, so hopefully I've been able to skip through those models relatively quickly and get at least my views on paper here. It's not quite as an exciting a month for NG as I was hoping when I saw the reg hints. There's quite a lot of repetition in the SPs, the Air France, the Lufthansa. You know, they're not that exciting to do re-regs of models that you've already made, though I can understand there may well be a market for them for fleet builders and people who missed out on the original release. But it's probably a cheap and easy way to bulk up the number of models you're making too. So in some ways you could say there aren't really 27 releases, there are less, but it's still a very large month, and it kind of continues NG's movement towards the modern. There's a couple of classic models in here, but if you're looking actually in the models that are brand new and are classic, then really there's just the TWA Tristar and the Aeroflot Tu-204, and everything else is modern because you know you've got the two SPs are just re-regs, and the Buchanan is effectively just putting new titles on an existing design. So that's a little disappointing. 2 out of like 20 so models is not great from a classics perspective. Having said that, there's some other really good stuff here, and NG are kind of can't be everything to everyone, so different months they're obviously going to be releasing models that appeal to different markets. It's good that they're releasing stuff for the Indian scene. There's obviously keeping American collectors very happy, I'd like to think, with all these Deltas and Uniteds that are coming out. And there's a sprinkling of other models from different places. But I would like to see NG perhaps produce some slightly more unusual airlines. There's not a lot going on here. There's nothing from Africa, apart from this SAA, it doesn't really count. And there's nothing for some smaller airlines, and once again South America gets a buy as well. So there's space to increase the diversity of what's being made. But having said that, there's a huge market, I think, for the models they're releasing here. I think that all of these in the supersonic and half-fly area will sell really well, and several in that workhorse category should sell well as well, as long as people haven't spent a lot of time pre-ordering the jcwings versions, which probably will come out in at the end of the year, whereas these will come out sooner. So yeah, that's it for this month for NG models. Those are my thoughts. What do you guys think of the releases? Leave a comment. Love to hear what it is you're buying this month from NG and what you think of the releases and this change up to 27 releases a month. Whether that's going to last, we'll see. See you next time, guys. That's it. Bye.